Hey guys, what is going on? It is your good buddy Sam, and it's time for another exciting Max MSP tutorial. First, a very brief announcement. This Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're going to do another episode of Flotsam. That's going to be at mixer.com/flotsam. Little radio podcast where me and some friends listen to music and talk about it. Usually a pretty good time. If you are around, you should totally check it out. So let's see, what did I want to talk about today? Oh, I remember. Okay, so a little while back we were looking at this Autechre. It wasn't actually an Autechre patch, I don't think, or at least, I don't know, jury's still out on whether it is or is not actually the handiwork of Autechre themselves. But regardless, it had some interesting, it's at least reminiscent of Autechre, and it had some interesting DSP things going on in it that I thought were worth talking about. So what I wanted to do this time, I was looking at this patch and looking in particular at stuff like this. That was me taking chunks of the original patch and kind of turning it into stuff that had parameters exposed that we could play with. And it's great, like it looks okay, but it's still a little bit overcomplicated. And what I want to do is make this into a B-patcher, make it into kind of this UI module, this little modular block that will be more manageable than this kind of horrible patch squid that's going on here. So that's what we're going to do in this tutorial, turn each of these into a little B-patcher block. And that'll take us on the way to making this whole patch into something that's really modular and clean and understandable. So to get started, I'm going to now save this whole thing as a project. So come up to File, Save As Project, and what that's going to do, let's call this project Autechre Cleanup. And what that's going to do is close the patch and then reopen it inside of a project. And if you've ever worked with the project before, basically you get, what it's going to do is take a whole bunch of patches and associate them together along with whatever data or file resources or whatever you want to have. And it's just a nice way to stay organized. In particular, when we take this chunk of stuff here and turn it into a B-patcher, it's going to be saved in the project folder so that even if you take that project and send it somewhere else, Max will be able to find it without having to reconfigure the search path or anything nuts like that. So let's go into this project window here, and there's a button in the bottom left, Add File to Project. Click on that, and then click on Add New File. We're going to make the patcher now, so save in patchers. A new file, I'm going to call mine Drummer, because what it's going to be is basically it's going to do what this thing does, which is receive a phaser in and use that to generate a little kind of drum tone, drum sound. So let's copy all of this. Minus this load mess 2, copy that into this window. And now what I want to do is just save this and just start cleaning this up, trimming the fat a little bit and making this into something that we can read from a B-patcher that will look nice and clean. Why am I obsessed with cleanliness lately? I don't know, it's weird. But anyway, we'll be able to actually play with it and it'll be fun. So first thing to do here, take this preset guy. Now, right now it's connected to everything in this patch. That's because before we only wanted the preset to deal with certain objects. But here in the context of this patcher, we can actually have our preset just connected to, it can actually control everything, so we don't need to connect it to everything like this. So what I'm going to do is just cut all these chords like that. Next thing to do, let's go ahead and this thing down here, this selector with the clip and all this stuff, it's okay. It was doing some kind of multiplication, adding a little bit of, I don't know, this weird kind of timbrel slash amplitude modulation to the sound. I'm going to add it later as an effect, so let's just go ahead and chop all this out for now. I'd also, instead of a gain here, like to use a live dot gain. Live dot gain is nice because it gives you a meter and a gain all in one. Here in the inspector, I'm going to clear I'm not going to show the parameter name. I'm going to make the orientation horizontal. I'm going to give it an initial value of 0. And last but not least, let's make the number of channels 1. And then actually, come to think of it, I guess I really don't want the preset to affect the the amplitude here. So let's go ahead and connect the this preset here, this third outlet, the exclusion outlet. Let's connect that to the gain here. And then instead of sending this to a DAC, let's send it to an outlet, because we're making a B patcher. So we'll just send the sound back out to the master patcher to be affected, or whatever. Cool, that looks good. Next, instead of receiving the phaser up here, let's make an inlet to receive sound in. And then what I want to do with all the rest of this stuff, first move this down, move all this stuff down. One thing that we could do to clean this up a bit, so if you recall, the basic way that each of these works, we got an envelope and an oscillator. They're being controlled by this phaser and then multiplied together before the sound gets sent out. And we have two different models, model A and model B, for each of the envelope and oscillator that determines exactly how that envelope or how that oscillator is being generated. And with each of those, there's some parameters that affect the model for model A and some that affect the model for model B. Like here at the oscillator, this A cutoff and A curvature affect the way that model A works, but they don't affect model B at all. So what I want to do is disable those whenever we're in model B and enable them whenever we're in model A. So that's really straightforward. We'll just throw an equals 0 here, because whenever this is model A, this will output a 0. And then active $1 here. This will turn these two parameters on when we're working with model A and make them inactive when we're working with model B. I'm just going to copy that and make it equals 1. And this will disable or enable these controls depending on whether or not we're in model B. And actually this guy here, this slider, I'd rather have that be a live.dial whose long name I'm going to make B osc curvature, because it's controlling the curvature. I'll use that same thing for the short name. Give that the range of -1 to 1. Oops. -1 to 1. Make the unit style a floating point and give it an initial value of 0. Cool, that looks good. Connect that like so. And make sure it's connected to this active thing over here. Then I want to do the same thing for this guy. I'm just going to call this one B curvature for the long name and the short name. And connect that down to this guy, like so. Cool. And then all of these should be inactive, or rather should only be active when this model is in model A, or rather is in model B. There's some kids outside my apartment playing. What are these kids doing playing? Don't they know? They should be inside playing with Max. Okay, model A, looks good. Okay, last thing I want to do here, instead of this slider here to set the offset, let's make a live.dial. Oops. Live.dial, give it the parameter name, the long name, trigger, offset. Same for the short name. Give it the range of 0 to 360, why not? And unit style, let's go custom. And then on my keyboard down here for custom units, I can push Option 0 to actually give it that little degree sign. And now this trigger offset guy will let me pick values between 0 and 360. It's pretty handy. Then of course we need a scale 0, 360, 0, 1. Connect that straight up to this plus, like so. All right. That looks about perfect. I probably want one more inlet so we can set the preset from outside the patch. And then, don't want that load mess 1 there. And let's also make a read and write message so that we can save these presets to an external file if we want. Cool, so that's looking good for this bpatcher, this bpatcher 2b. Now let's actually move these objects in the position we want them in presentation mode. So I'm going to grab this control here, the cutoff, model buttons, cutoff, this guy, the model buttons, the preset control, the read and write button, all these controls, and the gain. Push Command-Shift-P to move these into presentation mode, and then switch to presentation mode. Cool, let's lay all this stuff out. I'm going to turn on the grid, and then come up to Arrange and turn on Snap to Grid, so these things will snap to grid positions. The first thing I want to do is make a name for this thing. We'll call it Drummer, and then in the inspector, make the font size 14. It's a little bit bigger. Let's make a new comment that says Trigger, and then we'll put the trigger controls down here. Oh, you know what? I also meant to make a an edge. No, what I want, a delta tilde, a less than tilde 0, and an edge tilde, just to detect whenever this oscillator, or rather whenever this phaser goes from wraps around back to 0. That will trip this button, and we'll be able to see that. I'm going to add that button to presentation as well. Cool, so back in presentation mode now. Move this trigger button up here, the trigger offset down here. Cool, let's make another comment that says preset for our preset controls. We'll put that over here. Another comment for the envelope. With this button to change the model, and then these controls underneath. Another comment for the oscillator. Oh my god. Put that over here. Model A, looking good. And then for these controls, let's do something like lay them out in a little 3x3, 2x3, I guess. Like so. That's looking okay. The cutoff button down here, along with the live dot gain. Looks pretty good. Not great. I'm not going to win any design awards, but I can live with that. Maybe with the preset up here. How's that look? Not terrible. I can live with that. One thing that might be nice, let's jump back to out of presentation mode. BG color, message box 0.65, 0.65, 0.65, 1.0. Just to set the background color to something a little grayer. Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, perfect. Cool. Last thing to do, come up to View, Patcher Inspector. Set this to open in presentation mode. Very nice. Save this, and then we should be able to jump back to this patch. And way over here, we'll make a bpatcher. Give it the argument drummer.maxpat. And look at that, it's opening up the patch that we just made. Isn't that exciting? It's not displaying our background color, which is annoying, but we can jump into the inspector and change the background mode to patcher background color. And now it actually shows that nice gray color that we had a second ago. So now all we want to do is make this make the same sound as this. That's a piece of cake. The first thing we do is make sure that it's receiving the right phaser, in this case phaser D. Throw a DAC tilde down here. Please don't be crazy loud and horrible. Look at that, it's not crazy loud and horrible. And then of course we want to be able to set these presets programmatically. So what I'm going to do is throw a load bang up here. I'm going to connect that to a message box that says, well, first actually what we should do is write these presets. So you remember we had this problem last time where this preset controller was set to control these presets, rather these parameters, but not these parameters, and that got pretty annoying. But with read and write here, we can actually save our presets to a file and load them up later. So what this preset should look like, let's see, we should be using model A for the envelope, model B for the oscillator, and then the cutoff should be on. And then the peak values, let's just set these values to these values. The peak should be 3000, the minimum is 200, the B time is 50, and this B-osc curvature should be minus 0.887. Right, looks good. And then if I shift click on this first preset, that writes it here. And if I click the right button, I can actually save these presets. So I'm going to save them in a folder in the patcher, in the project rather, called data. And then in that, I'll save this as drummer.maxpresets. And now I can fill this message box with read drummer.maxpresets, comma, space 1. And what that will do is first load those presets and then load preset 1. So that's all I need to do to make this have exactly the same behavior as this. I'm just going to do that really quickly for the other 4 of these, and then I'll meet you right back here. Okay, cool. So now I've got these all set up. Only thing left to do is connect them all to the right phasers, load the right presets, and then we should be in business. So this one should be phaser D, playing preset 1. And if we move up the volume, cool, exactly what it should sound like. This guy, phaser E, preset 2. Perfect. This guy, phaser A, preset 3. Yes, beautiful. This guy, phaser A, preset 4. And this guy on the bottom, phaser C, preset 5. Look at that, we have them all working together. D, E, A, C. Perfect, nailed it, look at that. So now these clean, elegant, smooth, streamlined B-patchers are going to replace this big octopusy mess. And we are that much closer to bringing this patch to a beautiful, clean, pristine, pure kind of nirvana. So I'll post this patch up so you can actually play with it if you want to. And thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget about Flotsam on Thursday, and I will see you next time.